There's something undeniably thrilling about the idea of a hidden door, a secret waiting to be uncovered, right beneath our feet or behind an unassuming wall. Picture this: you're wandering through the shadowy halls of a medieval castle, your fingers tracing the rough stone, when suddenly, a section of the wall gives way to reveal a narrow, winding staircase descending into darkness. What lies beyond? A forgotten treasure, a royal escape route, or perhaps a spy's clandestine meeting place? These hidden passages and trapdoors weren't just architectural quirks. They were lifelines, tools of power, and silent witnesses to history's most dramatic moments. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 25 of the most astonishing secret features tucked away in medieval castles across the globe, each one a testament to the cunning and creativity of the builders who crafted them. Think about the sheer ingenuity it took to design these concealed spaces. In an era without modern technology, architects and stonemasons devised ingenious ways to hide entire rooms, tunnels, and even escape routes within the very fabric of these towering fortresses. Some were built to protect royalty during sieges, like the hidden staircases that allowed kings and queens to flee unseen. Others served more sinister purposes, like secret chambers where prisoners were held, or where whispered plots against the crown were hatched. And then there are the legends, tales of lost treasures sealed behind trick walls, or ghostly figures said to still wander these hidden corridors. Every stone, every hidden lever, tells a story of survival, deception, or defiance. This isn't just a tour of ancient architecture, it's a journey into the minds of the people who lived in these castles. What drove them to carve out these secrets? Was it fear, ambition, or simply the thrill of outsmarting an enemy? As we explore these 25 hidden wonders, you'll discover how these passages shaped history, from saving lives during brutal sieges to fueling myths that endure to this day. So settle in, because we're about to step through the looking glass into a world where walls whisper, floors conceal, and nothing is quite as it seems. The secrets of the medieval world are waiting, and trust me, you won't believe what's been hiding in plain sight all this time. These hidden corridors and trapdoors were far more than just clever architectural flourishes. They were vital tools of survival in an era defined by shifting alliances and violent power struggles. Imagine a castle under siege, its walls shaking under the relentless barrage of enemy trebuchets. While attackers focused on the main gates, defenders could slip through a concealed passageway, emerging behind enemy lines to strike unexpectedly. The famous siege of Sheat Howe Galard in the early 13th century proved just how devastating this tactic could be. French forces infiltrated the supposedly impenetrable English stronghold through a forgotten latrine chute, turning the tide of battle in a single night. But not all secret routes were designed for combat. Some served as lifelines for royalty during moments of crisis. Take the hidden spiral staircase tucked behind a tapestry in Edinburgh Castle, a discreet escape path used by Scottish monarchs when rebellions turned the castle into a death trap. Others functioned as channels of covert diplomacy, like the Whispering Gallery in Berg, Eltz, where lords and spies exchanged messages through sound-carrying stone conduits, their words echoing through hidden channels no outsider could trace. Even the mere rumor of such passages could unsettle enemies, knowing that walls might have ears kept traitors cautious and allies loyal. The psychology behind these designs reveals just how deeply medieval rulers understood human nature. A castle wasn't just a fortress of stone, it was a theater of shadows where perception shaped reality. Hidden doors doubled as instruments of control. Prisoners might vanish overnight through a trapdoor, fueling whispers of supernatural forces at work. Servants could move unseen, gathering intelligence or delivering forbidden letters under the guise of empty corridors. And when a rival lord hesitated, wondering if his private mutterings had traveled through some undiscovered shaft, the castle's secrets became their own form of silent, unshakable power. What's truly remarkable is how these innovations blurred the line between myth and practicality. The same passage that saved a queen's life during an uprising might later inspire ghost stories about her phantom footsteps echoing in the dark. A spy's tunnel became a smuggler's den, then a tavern's hidden cellar, each generation repurposing the secrets of the past. These weren't just architectural feats, they were living, evolving testaments to the endless chess game of medieval survival, where every wall held a story and every floorboard might hide a gambit. Building a secret passage wasn't just about hiding a door, it was a masterclass in deception and engineering. Without the luxury of modern tools, medieval builders relied on sheer ingenuity to create mechanisms that defied detection. Take counterweight systems, for instance. A seemingly ordinary torch sconce might actually be the key to unlocking a hidden doorway. A gentle tug would trigger a series of hidden weights, causing an entire section of stone wall to pivot silently open, revealing a passage known only to a select few. These pivoting stones were carved with such precision that even the closest inspection wouldn't reveal their true function. Disguised hinges were another stroke of brilliance. Artisans crafted hinges that looked like nothing more than decorative ironwork, blending seamlessly into the castle's interior. When activated often by a hidden lever tucked behind a loose brick or a recessed knot in a wooden panel, these hinges allowed doors to swing open without a sound. Some of the most sophisticated designs even used gravity to their advantage. Trapdoors hidden beneath rugs or floor tiles could be triggered by a pressure plate, dropping an unwary intruder into a pit or dungeon below. The sheer foresight required to engineer these mechanisms is staggering, but the real genius lay in the psychological tricks woven into these hidden spaces. Many passages weren't just concealed, they were designed to confuse and disorient. A spy sneaking through a secret tunnel might find themselves walking in circles, thanks to carefully placed loops that doubled back on themselves. Others led to dead ends, leaving intruders trapped in pitch-black corridors with no escape. Some castles even featured decoy passages, fake doors that opened to reveal nothing but a solid wall, reinforcing the illusion that the castle's secrets were always just out of reach. What makes these feats even more impressive is the lack of standardized measurements or modern tools. Every mechanism had to be custom-fitted to its surroundings, with stonemasons and carpenters working in concert to ensure seamless integration. A single misaligned pivot or poorly balanced counterweight could betray the entire design. And yet, centuries later, many of these hidden systems still function perfectly, a testament to the skill of their creators. This wasn't just engineering, it was artistry. The same hands that carved grand cathedral arches also fashioned these clandestine masterpieces, proving that medieval builders were just as adept at concealment as they were at grandeur. Their work transformed castles into living puzzles, where every wall, floor, and fixture might hold a secret waiting to be uncovered. Beneath the postcard-perfect towers of Chillon Castle, where sunlight dances on Lake Geneva's waters, lies a shadow world of damp stone and whispered history. The castle's underground network is a masterclass in blending natural geography with human ingenuity, a maze of tunnels carved not just through rock but through time itself. Picture a line of servants moving like ghosts through these passages, hauling barrels of grain and casks of wine to outlast a siege, their flickering torches casting eerie shadows on walls still scarred by the scrape of armor and the tread of desperate footsteps. What makes Chillin's tunnels extraordinary isn't just their scale, but their strategic brilliance. While most castles relied on hidden doors within their walls, Chillin's architects turned the lake itself into an ally. One tunnel descends sharply to a concealed dock, its entrance camouflaged by reeds and stonework. In times of crisis, defenders could vanish into the night by boat, slipping across the water as attackers stormed empty halls above. The lake wasn't just a barrier, it became a silent accomplice swallowing secrets whole. Yet these passages weren't merely escape routes, they doubled as psychological weapons. Prisoners brought in through the tunnels would lose all sense of direction, emerging disoriented into dungeon cells, convinced they'd been taken to some distant underworld. The castle's infamous underground prison still bears graffiti left by captives' names scratched into walls alongside crude sundials marking endless days. Among them, the defiant markings of François Bonnivard, the real-life prisoner who inspired Byron's poem, The Prisoner of Chillon, his words echoing through the same corridors that once sealed his fate. The tunnels also reveal a darker practicality. During peacetime, they served as cold storage for perishable goods, their constant chill preserved by the lake's icy breath. But when conflict loomed, those same chambers could become makeshift barracks or armories, their locations known only to trusted guards. Even the castle's well was hidden within this labyrinth, a final safeguard against poisoning or sabotage. Every brick seems to whisper the same lesson. In medieval survival, redundancy wasn't just clever, it was life or death. Walking these passages today, you can almost feel the weight of centuries pressing in. The air smells of wet stone and old iron, and if you listen closely, the lake's murmur blends with the ghost of long-gone footsteps. Chillin's genius lies in how it turned its greatest vulnerability, its exposed lakeside position, into an asset, proving that the best secrets aren't just hidden, they're woven into the very landscape. Edinburgh Castle's Whispering Gallery proves that medieval architects didn't just master stone, they manipulated sound itself. Picture this, you're standing in what appears to be an ordinary underground chamber, its rough-hewn walls curving gently like the inside of a giant stone ear. Speak at a normal volume near one end, and your words travel with uncanny clarity to someone listening 30 feet away, as if you're standing right beside them. This wasn't accidental architecture. Every curve was calculated to turn solid rock into an invisible listening device. The gallery's true purpose was psychological warfare as much as surveillance. Prisoners brought in for questioning would unknowingly have their private conversations amplified to guards stationed in hidden alcoves, even more chilling. The designers installed small air vents that made whispers sound like they were coming from above, creating the illusion that the very walls were eavesdropping. Some accounts suggest interrogators used this to convince prisoners that divine forces were revealing their secrets, breaking their resolve before questioning even began. What's fascinating is how this acoustic trick mirrors natural phenomena. The same physics that let you hear waves crashing inside a seashell were harnessed here on a grand scale. By angling the walls at precise intervals, sound waves bounced along the surface rather than dissipating, a principle later used in modern concert halls. But where today's architects aim for clarity of music, Edinburgh's builders sought clarity of confession. The gallery became so effective that rumors spread of magical hearing stones planted throughout the castle, keeping even free occupants wary of speaking freely. Modern visitors testing the gallery's effects often describe an uncanny sensation like hearing a ghost breathe words directly into your ear. The acoustics are so precise that a dropped coin at one end sounds like a thunderclap at the other. This wasn't just clever engineering, it was theater. When a captured rebel's whispered plot echoed back at him during trial, or when a lord, miraculously, repeated a servant's private complaint word for word. The gallery didn't just expose secrets, it created an aura of omniscience that reinforced the castle's unshakable authority. Perhaps most remarkably, the Whispering Gallery represents an early fusion of science and statecraft. At a time when many still attributed strange sounds to spirits, Edinburgh's builders understood waveform propagation well enough to weaponize it. They turned architecture into an invisible interrogator, proving that in the medieval world, walls didn't just have ears, they had perfect recall. Hidden in plain sight behind the innocent facade of Harvington Hall's timbered walls lies one of history's most ingenious acts of defiance, the priest hole. These cramped, airless chambers weren't just hiding places, they were acts of rebellion carved into the very bones of the house. Imagine the terror of a Catholic priest during England's Reformation, his faith outlawed, his life forfeit if caught, squeezing into a space no larger than a coffin as Protestant search parties pounded on the walls below. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Discovery meant torture and execution, not just for the priest but for the family sheltering him. What makes Harvington's priest holes extraordinary isn't just their existence, but their sheer audacity. The most famous hides behind a fireplace, a masterstroke of misdirection. While searchers checked under stairs and behind tapestries, few thought to inspect the chimney itself. The priest would climb into the flue, then slide sideways into a hollow space between walls, the soot-streaked bricks masking any trace of his passage. Other holes lurked beneath floorboards, accessible only by removing a single, unremarkable plank, or behind wooden panels that blended seamlessly with the hall's ornate carvings. Each was a silent testament to the cunning of Nicholas Owen, the builder who risked everything to craft them. Owen's story is as gripping as his creations. A devout Catholic in a Protestant-ruled England, he traveled the countryside under the guise of a simple carpenter, secretly designing hideaways in the homes of sympathetic nobles. His work demanded more than woodworking skill. It required an encyclopedic knowledge of human behavior. He positioned priest holes near latrines, knowing the foul smell would deter thorough searches, and built them with vertical shafts so that even if discovered, they appeared to be nothing more than structural gaps. Some included hidden compartments for communion wafers and sacred oils, turning each hole into a makeshift chapel. The psychological toll on those who used these spaces is almost unimaginable. Priests might spend days in total darkness, their only company the scuttling of rats, straining to hear whether the searchers had left. One account describes a priest who endured 3 days curled in a hole beneath a bathtub, the household carrying on as usual above him while soldiers ransacked the premises. The air grew so thin that when finally freed, he collapsed, his body bruised from immobility. Yet these horrors paled beside the alternative capture meant being hanged, drawn, and quartered, a fate so gruesome that many chose starvation in hiding over surrender. Harvington's priest holes also reveal a darker irony of the Reformation. While Protestants accused Catholics of idolatry for venerating relics, they themselves became obsessed with hunting these living relics of the old faith. Search parties employed priest catchers, men who specialized in finding hidden compartments, tapping walls for hollow sounds, or lighting candles to detect drafts from concealed vents. Some even brought children, believing their small hands might discover latches adult fingers missed. The holes then weren't just physical spaces. They were battlegrounds in a war of perception, where every creaking floorboard might betray a life. What lingers most in these spaces today isn't just the ingenuity of their construction, but the quiet courage they represent. Nicholas Owen was eventually captured and tortured to death in the Tower of London, but he never revealed a single hiding place. His legacy endures in the untouched priest holes still scattered throughout England, silent witnesses to a time when faith was worth dying for, and the walls themselves became allies in the fight for survival. To stand in one now is to feel history's whisper, that sometimes the most powerful acts of resistance are the ones no one ever sees. Bran Castle's trapdoors weren't just functional, they were psychological warfare carved into wood and stone. Picture an invading soldier creeping through the castle's dimly lit corridors, his armor clinking softly, when suddenly the floor vanishes beneath him. One moment he's advancing, the next he's plummeting into a pit lined with sharpened stakes, the trapdoor snapping shut above him like the jaws of some unseen beast. These weren't mere defensive measures, they were calculated to sow terror, turning the castle itself into a predator. What makes Bran's mechanisms particularly chilling is their duality. Some traps were automatic, triggered by weight or a misstep on a cleverly disguised floor plank. Others required human intervention, a guard hidden in a shadowed alcove, waiting to yank a lever that sent intruders tumbling into darkness. This combination of mechanical cunning and human malice created an environment where danger could strike from anywhere at any moment. Even the castle's infamous connection to Dracula, though historically tenuous, feels eerily fitting. The vampire legend thrives on unpredictability and lurking dread, much like these hidden death traps. Debates swirl around how often these traps were actually used. Some historians argue they were more deterrent than daily defense, their reputation alone enough to discourage attacks. After all, why storm a castle where the very floors might betray you? Others point to wear patterns on certain mechanisms, suggesting repeated use during sieges or uprisings. Regardless, their presence speaks volumes about medieval mindset, where survival often depended on outthinking your enemy in the cruelest ways possible. The genius of Bran's design lies in its simplicity. Unlike complex hidden passages requiring intricate engineering, these traps needed nothing more than a pivoting plank or counterweighted platform. Yet their impact was profound. A single successful drop could demoralize an entire assault force, their comrades' screams echoing from some unseen abyss below. In an era before security cameras or motion sensors, these rudimentary devices achieved the same goal: absolute control through fear. Visitors today can still see some of these trapdoors, their edges worn smooth by centuries of cautious footsteps. Running a hand along the grooves where the mechanism once pivoted, you can almost hear the whispers of those who avoided or didn't avoid their bite. Bran's traps remind us that in medieval warfare, sometimes the most effective weapons weren't swords or arrows, but the silent, waiting dark beneath an ordinary floor. Warwick Castle's hidden staircase isn't just a forgotten architectural quirk. It's a masterstroke of defensive psychology carved into stone. Tucked inside Guy's Tower, this corkscrew passage reveals how medieval builders weaponized every detail, from the door's near-invisible seam to the deliberately uneven steps that trip up even modern visitors. Picture a guard fleeing upward during an attack, his boots finding perfect rhythm on steps he's memorized, while his pursuers stumble behind him, each misstep buying precious seconds. This wasn't just stairs, it was a calculated obstacle course disguised as ordinary masonry. The genius lies in what architects call design discomfort. The steps alternate between shallow and deep, with some slanted outward at odd angles. In darkness or panic, an unfamiliar foot would catch the edge, sending invaders tumbling backward like dominoes. Meanwhile, defenders trained on these stairs could practically dance up them. One account describes a messenger scaling all 5 flights in under a minute during a siege, his path concealed by the tower's shadowed curves. The staircase also features narrow murder holes where defenders could drop stones or boiling liquids on anyone caught in the spiraling bottleneck below. What's often overlooked is how this design manipulated sound. The tight spiral acted like a stone trumpet, amplifying noises from below while muffling movements above. A guard at the top could hear armor clanking 3 floors down while his own footsteps vanished into the tower's thick walls. This acoustic trick turned the staircase into an early warning system. Long before attackers reached the top, their presence echoed ahead like a gruesome dinner bell. Modern visitors climbing these steps often report an uncanny physical memory. The body instinctively leans into turns where medieval archers once took defensive positions, and fingers brush grooves worn into the inner wall by generations of grasping hands. Some grooves are deeper than others, testaments to moments of particular terror when the castle's survival hung on this hidden artery. Unlike grand halls or glittering throne rooms, this staircase whispers the castle's true purpose. Not just a home for nobles, but a machine for outlasting enemies through sheer cunning. Perhaps most remarkably, the staircase's entrance was camouflaged to look like part of the tower's structural ribbing. Only someone pressing their palm against the right stone would feel the faintest give, revealing a pivot point for the hidden door. This level of deception speaks to a broader truth about medieval defense. The best protection wasn't just thick walls, but the ability to control movement within them. While invaders battered main gates, defenders could appear and vanish like phantoms, turning the castle itself into a living, breathing adversary. Tucked into the steep hills of Germany's Moselle Valley, Berg Eltz's hidden escape route is a masterclass in blending architecture with nature. Unlike other castles that relied on dramatic trapdoors or underground tunnels, this passage took advantage of the forest itself as camouflage. The entrance wasn't just concealed, it was practically invisible, hidden behind a tangle of ivy and a strategically placed outcrop of rock that looked like nothing more than part of the hillside. Even in broad daylight, the gap between stones appeared seamless, a trick of the eye that only the Eltz family and their most trusted retainers knew how to navigate. What makes this escape route extraordinary isn't just its secrecy, but its logistical brilliance. The narrow path winds down the steepest face of the castle's foundation, where attackers would least expect movement. Shielded by dense foliage and designed to accommodate only one person at a time, it allowed the family to slip away silently while siege engines battered the main gates. The route emptied into a ravine where horses could be waiting, proof that survival wasn't just about hiding, but about maintaining supply lines even in direst circumstances. The psychological weight of this secret is palpable. For over 800 years, not a single outsider discovered the passage, a testament to the Eltz family's discipline. In an era where castle staff often numbered in the hundreds, keeping such a secret required absolute loyalty. Servants who tended the route were reportedly chosen from families who'd served the Eltz for generations. Their silence ensured not just by oath, but by the unbreakable bonds of tradition. This wasn't just a hidden path, it was a covenant of trust written into the landscape itself. Modern visitors peering into the passage's narrow mouth often miss a crucial detail: the slight downward slope of the steps. Designed to funnel rainwater away, this feature prevented erosion that might betray the path's existence over time. Even the stones were locally sourced, their colors matching the surrounding cliffs so perfectly that from a distance the passage dissolved into the terrain. The builders didn't just hide a route, they engineered its invisibility, anticipating centuries of weathering and growth. Perhaps most striking is how the passage reflects the Eltz family's unique position. Unlike many castles that fell to ruin or conquest, Berg Eltz remains in the same family to this day, a continuity that makes this secret feel oddly alive. Walking the route now, you're treading the same stones where, in 1632, the family fled a brutal siege by the Archbishop of Trier, vanishing into the woods like ghosts. The forest has grown thicker, the stones smoother, but the quiet genius of the design endures, a reminder that sometimes the best defense isn't a stronger wall, but the ability to disappear without a trace. Housker Castle's shifting walls feel less like architectural quirks and more like deliberate sleight of hand, as if the stones themselves are part of some centuries-old magic trick. Deep in the Czech countryside, this fortress defies logic with its layout. Staircases leading nowhere, corridors terminating in solid masonry, and most chilling of all, sections of wall that seem to realign when no one's watching. While skeptics attribute these anomalies to uneven settling or later renovations, the precision of certain features suggests something far more intentional. Take the so-called breathing wall in the chapel, a section where the mortar appears fresher than surrounding areas, as if regularly disturbed by some unseen mechanism. What sets Housker apart isn't just its hidden spaces, but the sheer psychological weight of their design. Unlike typical secret passages meant for escape or surveillance, these chambers feel deliberately unsettling. The castle's infamous bottomless pit, a dark shaft in the lower levels, was reportedly sealed not to keep invaders out, but to contain something within. Local folklore whispers of winged creatures clawing at the stones from below, and Renaissance-era accounts describe laborers refusing to work near certain walls, claiming they heard scratching from the other side. Whether superstition or something darker, the castle's architecture seems to feed these fears, with odd acoustics that amplify whispers and distort footsteps. Modern scans have only deepened the mystery. Ground-penetrating radar reveals voids behind several walls, yet attempts to access them encounter bizarre resistance, drill bits snapping, cameras malfunctioning, and in one case, a thermal imager picking up a cold spot that moved against air currents. Historians note that Housker lacks typical defensive features like wells or armories, fueling theories that it was never meant as a residence or fortress, but as a kind of medieval containment unit. Even its location seems deliberate, built atop a limestone karst system riddled with natural caves, as if anchoring something subterranean. The most compelling evidence of moving walls comes from a 1980s restoration team. While repairing the northern facade, workers documented a narrow gap between stones that vanished overnight. The mortar between them suddenly aged to match centuries-old sections. Engineers found no evidence of recent tampering, leaving only two possibilities. Either someone replicated medieval masonry techniques with impossible accuracy, or the castle's fabric somehow adjusts itself. Standing in Housker's courtyard, you can almost feel the weight of its secrets pressing outward against the stone. This isn't just a castle with hidden rooms, it's a place where architecture bends to something beyond human understanding, where every odd angle and abrupt dead end seems to whisper the same question. Are the walls hiding the castle's secrets, or are they the secret themselves? Chillon Castle's spiral passageways aren't just replicas, they're living experiments in medieval problem-solving. Picture a stonemason in 21st century France, chiseling a hidden staircase into a wall using only 13th century tools, his hands blackened with soot from the forge where his iron nails were hammered. Every curve of these twisting staircases is a conversation across time, revealing how trial and error shaped the castles we marvel at today. Unlike static ruins, Gedlin's passages are works in progress, their imperfections offering something pristine ruins can't: the chance to witness medieval engineering as it happens, complete with the frustrations and breakthroughs its original builders would have faced. What makes these passages revolutionary is their transparency. At Gedlin, visitors don't just see finished secret doors. They watch as oak pegs are carved to hold pivoting stones, or as mortar mixed from local lime binds walls without a single modern adhesive. The castle's hidden spiral staircases, tucked between inner and outer walls, were built using geometric techniques rediscovered through painstaking research. Some attempts failed spectacularly. Early staircases collapsed under their own weight until builders realized medieval masons subtly thickened certain steps to distribute pressure. Others succeeded by accident, like the discovery that rough-hewn stones provided better traction for hurried footsteps than smooth ones, a detail found in ancient castles but long misunderstood. The psychological impact of these spaces is equally fascinating. Climbing one of Gedlin's reconstructed staircases, you notice how the alternating step heights create a disorienting rhythm, intentional design meant to give defenders the upper hand in combat. Narrow slit windows aren't just for air, they cast jagged light patterns that make descending attackers misjudge distances. Even the direction of the spiral matters. Most turn clockwise, forcing right-handed swordsmen to fight at a disadvantage with their weapon arm cramped against the central column. These weren't just architectural choices, they were calculated manipulations of human perception and physiology. Perhaps most striking is how Gedlin's team debunks myths. The romantic image of solitary genius architects drafting castle plans, far from reality. Medieval builders worked incrementally, adapting to material shortages and terrain. A passage might start as a simple service corridor, then evolve into an escape route when war loomed. Some secret features were likely afterthoughts, a gap between walls repurposed as a spy hole, or a collapsed tunnel turned into a defensive choke point. Gedlin proves that medieval engineering was less about grand designs than relentless improvisation, where every mistake could become a strategic advantage. Standing in these passages today, the line between past and present blurs. The scent of green oak from freshly cut steps mingles with the tang of iron tools, just as it would have 8 centuries ago. Visitors running their hands along the walls feel the same tool marks found in castles built by long-dead masons, proof that some challenges transcend time. Gedlin doesn't just teach us how hidden passages were made, it reveals why they endure as testaments to human ingenuity. In a world of 3D printing and AI, there's still no substitute for the lessons whispered by stone and sweat. Malbork Castle's deceptive corridors prove that sometimes the best defense wasn't strength but sheer confusion on an epic scale. Built by the Teutonic Knights in the 13th century, this sprawling brick fortress didn't just rely on thick walls to deter invaders, it weaponized disorientation itself. Imagine you're an attacker who's breached the outer gates, only to find yourself in a labyrinth of identical-looking passageways. One door promises access to the inner sanctum until it opens to reveal a solid wall of bricks mocking your progress. Another corridor seems to lead toward the armory, but after 3 sharp turns, dumps you back where you started. Meanwhile, hidden archers track your every wrong move from arrow slits disguised as decorative brickwork. This wasn't just architecture, it was a psychological chess game where the castle always stayed 3 moves ahead. The brilliance of Malbork's design lies in how it exploited human instinct. Faced with identical branching paths, most invaders would default to turning right, a tendency medieval builders knew well, so they positioned dead ends to the right, leaving the leftward paths to twist toward kill zones. Some false doorways even featured shallow alcoves behind them, creating the perfect ambush spot for defenders waiting with polearms. The castle's sheer size amplified these tricks, covering an area equivalent to nearly 50 football fields. Malbork could swallow whole companies of soldiers into its maze-like depths. Records suggest that during the 13-day siege of 1454, Polish forces lost more men to friendly fire in these confused skirmishes than to actual combat. But the deceptions didn't stop at corridors. Malbork's grand refectory, the castle's showpiece hall, housed one of the era's most audacious architectural illusions. Its vaulted ceiling appears supported by slender columns, but hidden within those decorative pillars are load-bearing stone cores. Attackers targeting what looked like structural weak points would waste precious siege engines on mere facades. Even the castle's famous well concealed its true depth. Drawings from the period suggest its opening was intentionally narrowed to disguise how far below the water table it reached, preventing besiegers from accurately calculating how long the garrison could last. Modern laser scans have revealed just how calculated these deceptions were. Certain, accidental, uneven floors slope just enough to make intruders list slightly to one side, throwing off their sword strikes. Narrow doorways force right-handed attackers to expose their unshielded sides, while recessed murder holes above are positioned at the exact angle where a stumbling invader's helmet would gap open at the neck. Every element feels like part of some grim equation where architecture equals attrition. What's most striking isn't just the complexity of these tricks, but their endurance. Centuries later, during World War II, Nazi officers using Malbork as a headquarters reported similar disorientation, soldiers getting lost in sectors that hadn't changed since the Middle Ages, or hearing phantom footsteps in acoustically baffled halls. The castle's genius lies in its timeless understanding of human psychology, that nothing terrifies us more than the sense that the very ground beneath our feet can't be trusted. In Malbork's shadowed passageways, you don't just walk through history, you experience the primal fear that made medieval warfare as much a battle of wits as of weapons. Beneath the sweeping views of St. Michael's Mount, where the Cornish coast meets the churning Atlantic, lies a secret that defied time itself, a chapel so well hidden, even the castle's own records forgot it existed. Tucked behind a pivoting section of stone wall in the island fortress, this clandestine place of worship feels like stepping into a medieval noble's most private thoughts. Imagine the scene, flickering candlelight illuminating frescoes of archangels on walls no common worshipper would ever see, the scent of beeswax mixing with salt air seeping through hidden vents, while outside, ordinary pilgrims filed into the Mount's grand public chapel, unaware of the sacred space concealed just footsteps away. The chapel's design reveals how intensely medieval rulers guarded their spiritual privacy. Unlike grand cathedrals built to inspire awe, this tiny chamber, barely large enough for a handful of worshippers, prioritized intimacy over spectacle. Its movable wall wasn't just practical, it was symbolic. When closed, the stones aligned so perfectly that even knowing its location, you'd struggle to find the seams. Only the lord of the castle and his closest family would know the trick, a specific stone near the base that, when pressed upward, released the counterweight mechanism. Inside, the space feels suspended between worlds, the vaulted ceiling low enough to touch, amplifying whispered prayers into echoes that seem to hang in the air like incense. What truly astonishes isn't just the chapel's existence, but the completeness of its erasure from history. When workers rediscovered it during 19th century renovations, they found no mention in any surviving ledger, no hint in family correspondence. Even the castle's builders appeared to have taken the secret to their graves. The only clues were subtle, a slight unevenness in the wall's mortar where repairs had been made, and the chapel's orientation, aligning not with the public church's axis, but with a sunrise visible only from the Lord's private chambers on the summer solstice. This wasn't just concealment, it was a sacred geometry known only to a chosen few. The chapel's artifacts deepen the mystery. Beneath the altar, excavators found a hollow containing a personal psalter. its pages marked by fingerprints on passages pleading for divine protection against enemies. Nearby lay a single silver coin of Edward I, deliberately wedged between stones, perhaps as a votive offering. These finds suggest the space served more than quiet devotion. It was a spiritual stronghold where rulers sought strength for impossible decisions, far from the judging eyes of court or clergy. Perhaps most poignant is what the chapel lacks: any depiction of saints associated with public virtue or communal salvation. Instead, its surviving frescoes focus on Michael the Archangel, not as a benevolent protector, but as a warrior casting down rebels. The message feels intensely personal, a noble's reminder that leadership sometimes required heavenly wrath as much as mercy. In this hidden room, power and piety intertwined, creating a space where the weight of rule could be confessed without weakness being seen. Standing there today, you can almost hear the echoes of a lord's murmured prayers bouncing off stones that kept his doubts as guarded as his gold. The chapel endures as a testament to medieval nobility's dual nature, their need to present unshakable authority to the world, while wrestling with human fragility behind walls even time forgot. It's a reminder that sometimes the most revealing histories aren't written on parchment, but hidden in plain sight, waiting centuries for the right hands to press the right stone. Deep beneath Leep Castle's crumbling battlements lies a chamber so horrifying, even seasoned archaeologists hesitated at its edge: the Oubliette. Unlike typical dungeon cells, this pit wasn't just about confinement. It was a slow death sentence disguised as architecture. Picture a narrow shaft, its walls slick with moss, terminating 20 feet below in a bed of rust-colored spikes. The trapdoor above, cleverly integrated into the floor of the bloody chapel, could be triggered with a single pull of a hidden lever, sending victims plummeting into darkness. But what makes Leep's Oubliette uniquely cruel isn't just its mechanics, it's the psychological torment woven into its design. Prisoners survived the fall only to find themselves impaled just enough to prevent movement, left to starve in agony as their cries echoed upward through the castle's hollow walls. The O'Carroll clan, who ruled Leep during its bloodiest years, perfected this horror as both punishment and propaganda. Rival chieftains, rebellious family members, even unlucky servants, all might vanish without trial, their fate known only to those who heard the muffled thud of the trapdoor sealing shut. When the Oubliette was rediscovered in the early 20th century, workers uncovered a macabre puzzle: skeletal remains stacked in layers, some still clutching at the walls with finger bones worn to nubs from futile climbing attempts. Carbon dating revealed these weren't from a single massacre, but centuries of discrete executions, turning the pit into a gruesome timeline of the castle's silent violence. Yet the Oubliette's true power lay in its ambiguity. Unlike public executions that risked inspiring martyrdom, these disappearances let fear fester in the imagination. A missing rival might have escaped, or could be suffering just beneath his family's feet, his whimpers drowned out by castle feasts. The O'Carrolls allegedly hosted banquets directly above the pit, the revelry masking any sounds from below while reinforcing their reputation for merciless control. Even the chapel's consecrated ground added a layer of sacrilegious dread. Victims weren't just killed, but seemingly erased from God's sight. Modern paranormal investigators claim the Oubliette still holds onto its horrors. Visitors report sudden temperature drops near the trapdoor, and some swear they've felt invisible hands brush their ankles, a stark contrast to the chapel's serene stained glass. Whether these stories stem from suggestion or something more, they prove the Oubliette's lasting impact. Unlike castles where hidden passages speak of ingenuity or escape, Leep's secret is a blunt reminder that medieval power often thrived in the spaces between what was seen and what was feared. The stones here whisper not of clever survival, but of the darkness that festers when cruelty becomes architecture. Carefilly Castle's sliding door isn't just a barrier, it's a medieval bear trap engineered to perfection. Picture this: invaders charge through the gatehouse, believing they've breached the castle's defenses, only for a 2-ton oak slab to thunder down behind them, sealing their fate. What makes this mechanism extraordinary isn't just its brute force, but its chilling precision. The door didn't just drop, it slid into place along greased grooves, its descent controlled by a counterweight system so finely balanced that a single guard could operate it. Even today, centuries later, the door moves with eerie smoothness, a testament to the craftsmanship of engineers who had no blueprints, only intuition and experience. The genius of Carefilly's design lies in its layered deception. The gatehouse appeared vulnerable, its arched entrance inviting attack, but this was bait. Once attackers crossed the threshold, murder holes in the ceiling rained down arrows and boiling liquids, while the sliding door cut off retreat. The trapped invaders became fish in a barrel, their numbers meaningless in the killing zone. Archaeologists found grooves in the stone where the door's edges fit so tightly that not even a dagger's blade could wedge it open. This wasn't just a door, it was a meticulously calibrated instrument of war. What's often overlooked is the psychological warfare embedded in this mechanism. The door's operation was nearly silent, lacking the dramatic clang of a portcullis. Attackers might not realize they were trapped until their own panicked shouts echoed back at them from the sealed passage. Welsh defenders reportedly exploited this confusion by waiting just long enough for hope to flicker before striking, letting fear do half their work. The door's very existence also served as a deterrent. Local chronicles tell of rival lords abandoning sieges after spotting the ominous grooves in the gatehouse walls. Modern engineers have marveled at the counterweight system's sophistication. Unlike simpler drop gates that relied on brute force, Carefilly's design used physics like a maestro. The counterweights, likely concealed in hollow pillars to prevent tampering, were calibrated to the door's exact weight, allowing for rapid deployment without jarring impacts that might damage the mechanism. Some theorists suggest the system could even be set like a trap, requiring minimal human intervention once triggered. Standing before that gate today, you can almost hear the whispers of the craftsmen who perfected this lethal ballet of wood and stone. Every scorch mark on the oak, every groove worn smooth by centuries of use, tells a story of innovation born from necessity. Carefilly's sliding door didn't just defend a castle, it redefined what was possible in an age where survival hung on the razor's edge between ingenuity and annihilation. Predjama Castle's Vanishing Room isn't just hidden, it's an optical illusion carved into living rock. Perched halfway up a towering Slovenian cliff face, this fortress didn't need moats or drawbridges. Its greatest defense was the landscape itself. From the valley below, visitors might glimpse what appears to be an ordinary chamber window until they shift position slightly, and the entire opening seems to dissolve into the limestone. The trick lies in the room's jagged edges, meticulously shaped to mirror the natural fractures in the cliff, while angled sightlines ensure the entrance only becomes visible from one precise vantage point. Attackers scaling the walls would scan right past it, their eyes sliding over the concealed portal like water over stone. The engineering behind this disappearing act reveals medieval builders thinking like the land itself. Instead of fighting the cliff's irregularities, they embraced them, using protruding rock formations as Chinese letter camouflage. The room's entrance wasn't a traditional doorframe, but a zigzagging crevice barely wider than a man's shoulders, its threshold littered with loose stones to obscure footprints. Even the interior played tricks. Walls followed the cliff's natural contours, making the space feel more like a cave than a constructed chamber. This wasn't just hiding, it was architectural mimicry so precise that birds often nested in the room's false rock ledges, unaware they'd entered human domain. History credits the castle's most infamous resident, the rebellious knight Erasm of Prajama, with perfecting these deceptions. During his 15-month siege in the 15th century, Erasm reportedly used the Vanishing Room to smuggle in supplies through a secret network of caves, taunting his enemies by feasting on fresh cherries while they starved him out. Contemporary accounts describe Habsburg soldiers camped within bowshot of the castle, never realizing supplies flowed literally beneath their feet through a hidden passage that connected to the room. The illusion held so well that when the castle finally fell, it wasn't through force but betrayal, when a servant revealed the location of the chamber's trigger mechanism. Modern restorers discovered the room's true genius lies in its dual purpose. By day, it functioned as a watchtower, its concealed arrow slits offering panoramic views of approaching threats. By night, it transformed into a smuggler's paradise, its acoustics funneling sounds from the valley below while dampening noises within. The walls still bear grooves where hanging tapestries could instantly convert the space from military outpost to clandestine meeting room. Even the temperature played a role. The natural rock kept the chamber frigid year-round, preserving food stores and making breath vapor invisible to spies watching from afar. Standing in that room today, you realize Prajama's builders didn't just exploit their environment, they collaborated with it. Where other castles proclaimed their might with towering walls, this one whispered its strength through absence, proving that sometimes the best defense isn't being unseen, but being unseeable. The stones here hold a lesson that transcends medieval warfare. True power often lies not in standing out, but in blending in so perfectly that your enemies walk right past you. Mont St. Michel's secret harbor isn't just hidden, it's a disappearing act choreographed by the moon itself. Rising like a mirage from Normandy's tidal flats, this island abbey guarded more than souls. It concealed a smuggler's paradise in its shifting sands. Twice daily, the retreating tide unveiled a labyrinth of submerged pathways known only to local fishermen and the abbey's most trusted monks. These weren't mere footpaths, but a liquid highway where contraband moved under the cover of piety, barrels of untaxed salt from Galard, Flemish wool avoiding ducal tariffs, even forbidden books wrapped in oilskin to survive the brackish crossings. The genius lay in nature's complicity. By the time authorities could organize pursuit, the sea would reclaim the routes, leaving no trail but foam and gold prints. The abbey's dual identity as sanctuary and smuggler's den reveals medieval pragmatism at its finest. While pilgrims trudged across the exposed bay along the marked, safe route, their progress slowed by quicksand and the ever-present threat of drowning tides, those in the know slipped through hidden channels. Some passages were marked by subtle cairns visible only at certain angles, while others required precise timing to navigate between patches of deceptively firm sand. Records from 15th century customs officers lament entire shipments of Bordeaux wine that seemed to vanish into the abbey's walls, only to reappear months later in Breton taverns. The monks themselves maintained plausible deniability, their robes providing perfect camouflage for moving goods beneath the abbey's soaring Gothic arches. Archaeologists recently discovered the system's true sophistication. Beneath the apparent chaos of tidal flats, medieval smugglers had engineered artificial channels, narrow trenches lined with tightly packed stones to prevent collapse. These maintained just enough water at low tide for flat-bottomed punts to glide through, their cargoes transferred to the abbey via a disguised postern gate now known as the Devil's Door. The gate's threshold was deliberately worn uneven to mimic natural erosion, while its hinges were recessed into the abbey's foundation to leave no visible marks on the exterior. Even the abbey's famed scriptorium may have played a role. Some scholars suggest illuminated manuscripts containing tidal charts were actually encrypted shipping schedules, their golden flourishes encoding delivery times. What makes Mont St. Michel's secrets so compelling is how they blur the line between sacred and profane. The same tides that framed the abbey's spiritual isolation also made it a hub of illicit commerce. Pilgrims kissing relics in the upper chapels had no idea the stones beneath their knees concealed hollow compartments where smuggled silk might be hidden. When kings sent investigators, the monks would lead them on deliberately arduous tours up the Grand de Grès staircase, its punishing incline designed to exhaust inquisitors before they could probe too deeply. This delicate dance between faith and survival speaks to a deeper truth about medieval life. Even the holiest places had to negotiate with the world's harsh realities. Today, when the tide retreats, you can still trace the ghostly outlines of those submerged pathways if you know where to look. Local guides point out faint depressions in the sand that align with centuries-old descriptions. But the true marvel isn't the physical remnants, it's the sheer audacity of the deception. Mont St. Michel stands as a testament to human ingenuity's ability to bend even celestial rhythms. The moon's gravitational pull, the sea's relentless advance into tools of subterfuge. In these shimmering tidal flats, the sacred and the secret didn't just coexist. They conspired, proving that sometimes survival demands collaboration between heaven and earth. Beneath the towering white cliffs of Dover, hidden within the chalky bedrock itself, lies a labyrinth that has rewritten history more than once. Dover Castle's tunnels aren't just empty passageways, they're a palimpsest of desperation and ingenuity, each layer telling a different story of survival. The earliest shafts date back to the 1200s, when King John ordered miners to carve out ambush routes that would let defenders erupt behind enemy lines like ghosts from the earth. Picture the chaos during the 1216 siege, French troops battering the main gates, only to have English soldiers materialize from the ground beneath their campfires, swords gleaming in the sudden darkness. These tunnels were medieval shock tactics made literal warfare turned into a game of three-dimensional chess. But what makes Dover's underground network extraordinary isn't just its medieval origins, it's how each generation reinvented these shadows to face new threats. During the Napoleonic Wars, the same tunnels that once hid ambushing knights became powder magazines, their walls thickened to contain the era's volatile gunpowder. Workers left graffiti in the chalk, crude carvings of ships and dates, marking their dread of invasion while they stockpiled explosives that could turn the tunnels into both arsenal and tomb. Centuries later, in 1940, these ancient passageways underwent their most dramatic transformation yet. As Nazi bombers darkened the skies, Winston Churchill's engineers expanded the tunnels into a subterranean command center, complete with plotting rooms and telephone exchanges. The medieval stone that once echoed with the clank of armor now hummed with the crackle of radios coordinating the Dunkirk evacuation. Walking these tunnels today is like stepping through a time machine where every corridor forks into a different century. In one section, you can press your palm against grooves worn by medieval archers dragging barrels of arrows. A few paces away, wartime stencils still mark Cipher Office or Sick Bay on walls that once held maps of the English Channel. The air smells of damp chalk and old electricity, a scent that somehow bridges 800 years of tension. Guides point out where a medieval tunnel abruptly intersects with a reinforced concrete wall from the Blitz, two eras of fear meeting at right angles. The real genius of Dover's tunnels lies in their adaptability. Unlike static castles that became obsolete, these hidden spaces evolved because they answered a universal need, the advantage of invisibility. Whether facing trebuchets or Stuka dive bombers, defenders kept returning to the same idea that safety and strategy often lie beneath the surface. Even the tunnel's floors became assets, their twisting layout, originally a byproduct of following soft chalk seams, later confused enemy spies who might infiltrate the WW2 complex. Perhaps most poignant are the traces left by ordinary people caught in these underground dramas. In a niche near the medieval latrine shaft, someone scratched a tiny chessboard into the wall, evidence of long waits during sieges. In the WW2 sections, patches of wallpaper cling stubbornly to the rock, remnants of attempts to make claustrophobic officers feel homely. These human touches remind us that secrecy wasn't just about kings and generals. It was about cooks, clerks, and miners who adapted these tunnels with their hands and wits. Standing at the intersection of a 12th century ambush route and a 1940s operations room, you realize Dover's true secret. The best defenses aren't just strong, they're shape-shifters. These tunnels whisper that while weapons and wars change, the instinct to hide, to outmaneuver, to turn darkness into an ally is timeless. The stone here remembers every adaptation, every desperate innovation, proving that sometimes the deepest strength isn't in walls that withstand blows, but in spaces that refuse to be defined by any single era's battles. Predjama Castle's disappearing floor was less a trapdoor and more a calculated act of architectural sabotage, a final gotcha waiting for invaders who thought they'd already won. Unlike hidden passages designed for stealth, this defensive gambit relied on sheer theatricality. Picture this: attackers burst through the Grand Hall's doors, expecting to seize the castle's heart, only for the very floorboards to vanish beneath their feet, dropping them into a pit of sharpened stakes or simply leaving them stranded like shipwrecked sailors on a suddenly isolated island of stone. The genius wasn't in the mechanism's complexity. Historical accounts describe simple iron hooks that could be tripped from a hidden alcove, but in its psychological impact. After battling through gates, scaling walls, and surviving murder holes, invaders faced one last betrayal from the castle itself. What makes Predjama's design remarkable is its temporary nature. Most castle secrets were built to last, hidden doors meant to endure centuries of use. But this collapsible floor was disposable by design, intended for a single, devastating use during sieges. Carpenters crafted the wooden planks to break away cleanly along pre-scored lines, while the supporting beams were deliberately weakened to fail under concentrated weight. It wasn't just a trap, it was a consumable weapon, as expendable as an arrow loosed from the ramparts. The castle's 14th century builder, Sir Edward Dallingrig, likely drew inspiration from portable military bridges of the time, structures meant to be dismantled quickly to thwart pursuit. Archaeologists piecing together the floor's mechanism discovered subtle clues in the Grand Hall's surviving architecture. The walls bear unusual grooves at waist height, likely anchor points for the hidden release system. More telling are the floor joist sockets, which show signs of having held beams with notched ends designed to pivot when triggered. This wasn't haphazard destruction, it was demolition by precise engineering. Even the pit below was carefully sized, deep enough to incapacitate, but shallow enough that survivors could be easily dispatched by defenders peering down from the edges. The disappearing floor also reveals a darker truth about medieval warfare. Castles weren't just defensible spaces, but psychological battlegrounds. Contemporary accounts describe how Dallingrig would deliberately let siege engines damage certain non-vital walls, luring attackers toward the Grand Hall's soft target. By the time invaders realized they'd been herded into a killing zone, it was too late. The floor's collapse served as both practical defense and brutal theater. a visceral demonstration that every inch of the castle, even the ground beneath one's feet, belonged to its lord. Modern visitors walking the Grand Hall's stone perimeter often miss the most ingenious detail. The floor's triggers were accessible only from a small balcony overlooking the space. This gave defenders full view of the chaos below while remaining safely out of reach. Some historians speculate the system may have been tested during peacetime using livestock or straw dummies, the medieval equivalent of a safety drill. Others point to scorch marks on the pit walls, suggesting the trap might have been combined with boiling liquids or fire for maximum horror. Bodiam's vanishing floor ultimately symbolizes the fluid nature of medieval defense. Where other castles relied on immutable stone, this Sussex stronghold embraced ephemerality, proving that sometimes the most effective secrets weren't those that endured, but those that appeared exactly when needed, then disappeared without a trace. The empty space where wood once met stone whispers a timeless lesson. In the chess game of castle warfare, even the board itself could be a weapon. Neuschwanstein Castle may have risen in the 19th century, but its soul belongs to the medieval world it so passionately emulates. Behind its fairy tale turrets lies a secret that would make any medieval lord nod in approval, a hidden treasury concealed with the kind of mechanical cunning that would feel right at home in a 13th century fortress. The most ingenious of these is the mirrored chamber, where a gilded looking glass doesn't just reflect the room, it hides a labyrinth of compartments accessible only to those who know its secrets. At first glance, the mirror appears perfectly ordinary, but press the right carved flourish on its frame, and the entire panel swings inward, revealing a vault designed to safeguard everything from jeweled goblets to sensitive correspondence. What makes this mechanism extraordinary isn't just its concealment, but its deliberate theatricality. Unlike medieval castles where hidden spaces prioritized utility, Neuschwanstein's treasury leans into romance. The mirror's release mechanism is a puzzle in itself, a sequence of rotating finials and counterweights that must be manipulated in precise order, like unlocking a melody on a music box. This wasn't just security, it was performance, a nod to King Ludwig II's obsession with the operatic grandeur of Wagnerian legends. The compartments behind the mirror are lined with velvet and lit by discreet gas lamps, turning the act of retrieving valuables into something closer to a sacred ritual. The treasury's design reveals a fascinating tension between nostalgia and innovation. While medieval builders relied on crude but effective pivoting stones, Neuschwanstein's craftsmen employed precision brass gears and weighted pulleys technology that would have seemed like magic to their predecessors. Yet the intent was identical, to create spaces that existed outside the awareness of all but a chosen few. Some compartments are so cunningly integrated into the wall's decorative carvings that even knowing their location, you'd struggle to spot the seams. Others use optical tricks like angled shelves that make deeper compartments appear shallow to casual inspection. This romanticized secrecy speaks volumes about the 19th century's relationship with the medieval past. For Ludwig, these hidden spaces weren't just practical, they were portals to a chivalric ideal he longed to inhabit. The treasury's centerpiece is a wrought iron strongbox fashioned after legendary relics like the Holy Grail, its lock disguised as a heraldic emblem. It's a telling detail. In Neuschwanstein, even security measures were designed to feed a fantasy. Archivists found notes suggesting the king would sometimes stage elaborate treasure hunts for guests, leaving clues that led to the mirrored chamber as if it were the climax of some Arthurian quest. Modern conservators discovered just how effective these illusions were during restorations in the 1990s. Infrared scans revealed 2 compartments behind the mirror that had gone undocumented, their openings camouflaged by gilding so flawless that generations of curators had dusted right over them. One held a peculiar artifact, a silver locket containing a miniature portrait of Ludwig himself, as if the castle's creator had literally hidden a piece of his identity within its walls. It's a poetic discovery that blurs the line between historical recreation and lived experience, proving that Neuschwanstein's greatest secret isn't its hidden gold, but its ability to make the imagined past feel tantalizingly real. Standing before that mirror today, you're faced with a delicious paradox. This is a 19th century homage to medieval secrecy, built with industrial-era tools, yet yearning for a time when castles held genuine mysteries. Neuschwanstein's treasury doesn't just store valuables, it safeguards a dream, one where every wall might whisper and every reflection could be a doorway. In that sense, it's perhaps the most authentic medieval space of all, not because it replicates historical accuracy, but because it captures the essence of what made castles magical in the first place, the promise that reality is never quite as solid as it seems. Carcassonne's Knight's Passage is a masterclass in medieval misdirection, a corridor so cleverly concealed, it redefined the meaning of "walls have ears." Wedged between the fortress's inner and outer walls, this narrow artery was invisible from both inside and out, its entrance disguised as nothing more than a slight irregularity in the stonework. Picture a column of armored knights moving single file through the darkness, their chain mail muffled by wool wrappings, emerging like specters behind enemy lines during a siege. The passage's discovery in the 19th century sent shockwaves through archaeological circles, not just for its existence, but for how it upended assumptions about medieval battle tactics. This wasn't just a hidden route, it was a psychological weapon that turned the castle itself into a silent ally. What makes the Knight's Passage extraordinary isn't just its stealth, but its precision engineering. The corridor follows a deliberate zigzag pattern, breaking sightlines so completely that even if an intruder stumbled upon the entrance, they'd see only a dead end after the first turn. The walls are lined with recessed niches not for torches, but for archers waiting in ambush, and here's the stroke of genius. The floor slopes almost imperceptibly downward toward the exterior, allowing rainwater to drain silently through hidden channels, preventing telltale puddles that might betray the passage's location. Every detail was calculated to erase all traces of human movement. The passage's rediscovery reads like an archaeological detective story. During renovations in 1853, workers noticed that one section of the outer wall sounded hollow when tapped. Probing further, they uncovered a gap just wide enough for a man in armor, a space that shouldn't have existed according to the castle's original blueprints. As they cleared centuries of debris, they found grooves in the stone where a pivoting door once stood, its mechanism long since removed or rusted away. Even more telling, the walls bore scrape marks at exact shoulder height, left by generations of knights brushing against the stone as they navigated the tight curve. Carcassonne's hidden network reveals a brutal truth about medieval warfare. The best defenses were often offensive in disguise. Historical records describe how defenders used the passage not just for flanking maneuvers, but for feigned retreats, luring attackers through a breached gate, only to have knights emerge from behind to seal the trap. During the Albigensian Crusade, this tactic reportedly decimated Simon de Montfort's forces when they stormed what they thought was an undermanned section of the walls. The castle's defenders vanished into the passage, reappearing minutes later where they were least expected, turning confidence into chaos. Walking the Knight's Passage today, you can still feel the weight of its secrets. The air is thick with the scent of damp stone and aged iron. and if you press your palm against the walls, you'll feel the faintest vibration from the wind outside, proof of how thin the barrier between hidden and exposed truly was. Guides love to demonstrate the passage's acoustics. A whisper at one end carries with unnatural clarity to the other, suggesting it may have doubled as a surveillance tunnel during peacetime. But the most haunting detail, the ceiling. It's riddled with tiny, deliberate chisel marks, not the work of later renovations, but the original builder's way of creating a rough surface that would deaden the sound of armor clanking overhead. This corridor isn't just a relic, it's a testament to how medieval architects weaponized perception. While invaders fixated on gates and towers, Carcassonne's defenders moved like shadows through the walls themselves. The Knight's Passage whispers a lesson that resonates far beyond the Middle Ages. True power often lies not in what your enemy sees, but in what they never even think to look for. High above Japan's Hyogo Prefecture, where Himeji Castle's white walls gleam like a heron taking flight, lies a chamber that proves terror needs no translation across cultures. The so-called Hell Room isn't marked on any tourist map, its entrance hidden behind sliding panels decorated with innocuous floral motifs. But lift the correct floorboard, a task requiring knowledge of which precise knot in the aged timber bears unnatural weight, and a yawning void appears. Unlike European oubliettes designed for slow starvation, this trapdoor served a more theatrical purpose. It opened onto a sheer 60-foot drop onto jagged rocks below, a fate prisoners were shown before questioning began. The genius wasn't in the drop itself, but in the sound it created. Wind rushing up through the shaft produced an unearthly wail that echoed through the interrogation chamber, convincing captives they truly stood at Hell's gateway. Himeji's designers weaponized belief with chilling precision. While European castles leaned on Christian imagery of damnation, here it was Buddhist cosmology that lent the trapdoor its power. Prisoners, often rival samurai or rebellious peasants, would be forced to kneel on the trembling floorboard while interrogators recited descriptions of Jugoku, the underworld where the faithless suffered. Then, with a subtle shift of weight on a concealed lever, the board would tip just enough to send a pebble skittering into the abyss. The resulting seconds-long silence before the distant clatter played on primal fears of the unknown, often breaking resistance before physical torture even began. Accounts from the Edo period describe hardened warriors reduced to trembling confessions by this psychological theater alone. What makes Himeji's trapdoor remarkable is how it mirrors European techniques despite oceans and centuries apart. Like Leep Castle's Oubliette or Warwick's uneven staircases, it exploited the human psyche's vulnerability to engineered dread. The castle's nightingale floorboards rigged to chirp like birds at every step functioned much like Carefilly's silent sliding doors, turning architecture into an alarm system. Even the hidden compartment where the lever mechanism was housed bears striking resemblance to priest holes in English manners, blending seamlessly into decorative woodwork. This wasn't coincidence, it was proof that when it comes to control, great minds think alike, whether those minds wore kabuto helmets or chainmail coifs. Modern visitors pressing their ears to the Hell Room's floorboards report an eerie discovery. The shaft still sings. Centuries of wind erosion have sculpted the cliff face below into a natural flute, transforming breezes into ghostly notes that vibrate through the wood. It's an accidental acoustical marvel the original builders couldn't have anticipated, yet one that deepens the chamber's legend. Local folklore claims the tones match the chanting of long-dead monks, while historians note the sound's frequency aligns with the human threshold for discomfort, another uncanny parallel to European castles where infrasound may have contributed to tales of hauntings. The true lesson of Himeji's trapdoor isn't about cruelty, but about the universality of psychological warfare. From Japanese castles to Welsh fortresses, rulers understood that the most potent threats aren't those we see, but those we imagine in the dark. The Hell Room endures as a cross-cultural testament to a grim truth. Whether facing a medieval daimyo or a Norman baron, the human mind has always been the easiest battlefield to conquer. Deep in the heart of Transylvania, Corvin Castle's weathered walls guard a secret that has tantalized historians and treasure hunters for centuries: the fabled Lost Library. Whispers speak of a chamber hidden behind a pivoting bookcase in the castle's Gothic wing, its shelves laden with manuscripts deemed too dangerous for public eyes. Some say these texts contain alchemical formulas that could transmute lead into gold, while others believe they hold heretical religious treatises banned by the medieval church. What makes Corvin's legend so compelling isn't just the potential treasure, but the meticulous craftsmanship of its concealment. The alleged mechanism, a disguised lever disguised as a decorative nailhead in an oak panel, would pivot the entire bookcase with near-silent precision, revealing a passage barely wide enough for a single person to slip through sideways. The castle's 15th-century owner, Matthias Corvinus, was notorious for his obsession with forbidden knowledge. As one of Renaissance Europe's most educated monarchs, he amassed a personal collection rumored to include everything from encrypted Hermetic texts to early scientific diagrams that challenged church doctrine. Contemporary accounts describe his agents scouring monasteries and universities for rare volumes, often paying in gold or political favors. Yet after his death in 1490, the library vanished from historical records, fueling speculation that loyal retainers walled it up within the castle's labyrinthine foundations. Modern scans of the walls reveal tantalizing voids, some aligned in patterns that suggest shelving, but no definitive proof of the library's location. Treasure hunters have tried everything from tapping walls for hollow sounds to smuggling in ground-penetrating radar disguised as restoration equipment. In 1937, a team of archaeologists claimed to have found a hidden lever behind a tapestry, only for the mechanism to jam after opening a mere crack. Peering inside with lanterns, they glimpsed what appeared to be rows of wooden chests before the bookcase abruptly swung shut, refusing to reopen. The incident was dismissed as a hoax, but skeptics can't explain why 3 members of that expedition vanished without trace weeks later. Even today, visitors occasionally report catching a whiff of aged parchment in certain corridors, an olfactory ghost that vanishes as quickly as it appears. Perhaps the most compelling clue lies in the castle's architectural quirks. The Matthias Wing features an unusual number of false doors and dead-end corridors, all converging near a section of wall that thermal imaging shows is significantly cooler than surrounding stones. Local folklore claims this temperature anomaly stems from a hidden ventilation shaft designed to preserve delicate manuscripts from humidity. More pragmatically, historians note that Corvinus employed Ottoman engineers who specialized in hidden chambers, the same craftsmen who built secret compartments in Topkapi Palace. Their signature technique involved lining hidden rooms with thin layers of lead to block moisture and dampen sound, a detail that might explain the thermal irregularities. Standing before that stubborn bookcase today, you're left with a delicious paradox. The longer the library eludes discovery, the more power its legend holds. In an age where satellites can map every inch of the planet, Corvin's secret remains defiantly analog, a puzzle of weight distribution and optical illusions that modern technology still can't crack. Whether the library ever existed almost doesn't matter. Its enduring mystery proves that some castles refuse to surrender their stories, guarding them as fiercely as any dragon hoard. The stones here whisper a timeless truth. Knowledge isn't just power, it's the one treasure that becomes more valuable the longer it stays hidden. ground-penetrating radar doesn't just uncover hidden passages, it shatters centuries of assumptions with every pulse. Take Nottingham Castle, where recent scans revealed a sprawling tunnel network beneath its foundations, invisible to generations of historians. These weren't crude escape routes, but a meticulously engineered subterranean highway wide enough for 2 knights to pass abreast, its walls lined with niches that once held torches. For years, archaeologists dismissed local legends of ghostly footsteps beneath the castle as folklore, until the radar images showed those footsteps had been echoing through very real, undiscovered corridors all along. The real revolution lies in how these technologies peel back layers of time without lifting a single stone. At Poland's Malbork Castle, thermal imaging exposed the faint outline of a bricked-up passage in the Grand Master's quarters, a detail invisible to the naked eye, but glaringly obvious to infrared cameras detecting subtle temperature variations in the mortar. Meanwhile, in Scotland, laser scanning at Dunottar Castle mapped a collapsed stairway hidden behind 5 centuries of rubble, its precise curvature matching descriptions from a long-dismissed 15th century chronicle. These tools aren't just filling gaps in history, they're vindicating oral traditions and fragmentary texts that scholars once labeled as myth. But the most exciting discoveries aren't always the grand tunnels or chambers. It's the small anomalies that rewrite daily life in these fortresses. When researchers at Portugal's Pina Palace used muon tomography, a technique that tracks cosmic particles passing through solid matter, they detected a hollow space behind a nursery wall no thicker than a prayer book. Further investigation revealed a clandestine peephole aimed directly at the child's crib, evidence of a royal spy network, monitoring even the most intimate family moments. Similarly, drone-mounted magnetometers at France's Pierrefonds Castle identified magnetic disturbances along a seemingly blank courtyard wall, exposing the ghostly imprint of long-rotted iron brackets that once supported a hidden exterior stair. The future of castle exploration lies in fusing these high-tech tools with old-fashioned historical detective work. At Germany's Berg fortress, archaeologists combined LiDAR scans with medieval account books to solve a 6th-century-old mystery: why certain walls bore unexplained scorch marks. The laser mapping revealed previously unnoticed ventilation shafts leading to a subterranean bakery, one that, according to the financial records, operated in total secrecy to avoid sharing bread taxes with the local bishop. This marriage of parchment and pixel proves that technology alone isn't enough. It takes both satellite imagery and a scholar's eye for marginalia to reconstruct the full story. What's thrilling isn't just what we've found, but what remains tantalizingly out of reach. At Spain's Almodovar del Rio, ground-penetrating radar recently detected a chamber beneath the chapel with dimensions matching descriptions of the lost crown jewels of Seville. But the room's contents remain a mystery, its entrance sealed behind reinforced concrete from 19th century renovations. Similarly, seismic surveys at Ireland's Blarney Castle outline what appears to be a vertical shaft descending from the famous Blarney stone chamber, its depth exceeding the equipment's measurement range. These lingering enigmas remind us that for every secret revealed, medieval castles still hold cards close to their chest, inviting a new generation of explorers to listen closely when the stones whisper. These hidden castle passages and trapdoors speak to something timeless in the human spirit, our endless dance between vulnerability and cunning. On the surface, they're relics of a violent past designed to outmaneuver invaders or conceal forbidden acts. But look closer and you'll find blueprints for the modern world. Every firewall in your computer, every biometric lock on a smartphone, even the discreet panic rooms in luxury homes, they all share DNA with these medieval innovations. The same instincts that drove a 13th-century stonemason to carve a pivoting wall now inspire cybersecurity experts to build digital labyrinths against hackers. What medieval builders understood better than anyone was the psychology of security. A castle's hidden staircase wasn't just a physical barrier, it was a mental one, preying on the intruder's fear of the unknown. Today's architects employ similar tactics. Ever notice how high security buildings use maze-like lobbies or irregular hallway angles? Those designs trace back to places like Malbork Castle, where disorientation became a weapon. Modern casinos take this further, using winding paths and absent clocks to manipulate perception, proof that medieval mind games didn't disappear. They just traded chainmail for chrome. The most striking parallel lies in how both eras balance concealment with spectacle. Medieval lords wanted hidden escape routes, but also rumors of those routes to unsettle enemies. Today's tech giants play the same game. Think of Apple's mythical black box data centers or the whispered about vaults beneath Swiss banks. Physical secrecy still carries weight in our digital age because it taps into primal instincts no firewall can satisfy. There's a reason Bond villains favor hidden layers over cloud storage, and why billionaire bunkers in New Zealand mimic castle keeps. The medium changes, but the message remains. True power thrives in shadows. These ancient spaces also challenge our assumptions about privacy. A priest hole wasn't just shelter, it was a radical act of defiance against surveillance states. That spirit lives on in encrypted messaging apps and dark web markets. When we marvel at Harvington Hall's hidden chambers, we're really seeing the ancestor of today's VPNs and burner phones. Both eras share a core truth. Oppression breeds innovation, and the desire to hide will always outpace the tools of exposure. Perhaps the most poignant lesson lies in the craftsmanship. Unlike today's mass-produced security systems, each medieval mechanism was bespoke, a marriage of local materials and human intuition. The irregular steps at Warwick Castle or the acoustics of Edinburgh's Whispering Gallery weren't just effective, they were beautiful in their precision. In an age of cookie-cutter tech solutions, there's growing nostalgia for that artisanal approach. Watch any locksport enthusiast picking an antique lock, and you'll see the same reverence medieval builders had for their craft. Ultimately, these castles remind us that secrecy isn't about technology, it's about storytelling. The best hidden doors weren't just functional, they spawned legends that outlasted the stones themselves. Our modern equivalents from Area 51 to Bitcoin's anonymous creator prove that mystery still captivates. The human brain hasn't changed since the Middle Ages. We still thrill at the idea of a world where walls whisper and floors conceal. These castles endure not as museums, but as mirrors, showing us that for all our satellites and algorithms, the most powerful secrets are still the ones we imagine lurking just beyond sight. From whispered galleries to vanishing floors, the 25 secret passages and trapdoors we've explored reveal the brilliance and brutality of medieval life in equal measure. These hidden spaces were far more than architectural quirks. They were lifelines for kings, nightmares for prisoners, and masterclasses in psychological warfare. Each creaking floorboard or seemingly innocent tapestry held the potential to rewrite history, whether by saving a fleeing monarch or dooming an overconfident invader. The true genius of these designs lies in their duality. A single pivoting stone could be the difference between a dynasty's survival and its collapse, while a well-placed trapdoor might turn a grand hall into a killing ground in seconds. What's fascinating is how these secrets reflect the societies that built them. The Whispering Gallery at Edinburgh Castle speaks to an era where information was power, and controlling its flow could mean the difference between rebellion and loyalty. Himeji's Hell Room mirrors the theatricality of feudal justice, where fear was as potent a tool as any blade, and Harvington Hall's priest holes, they're testaments to the raw human will to survive, even when the world declares your faith a crime. These weren't just hiding places, they were physical manifestations of hope, defiance, and sometimes chilling calculation. Technology continues to peel back layers of these ancient stones, revealing surprises that rewrite what we thought we knew. Ground-penetrating radar uncovers tunnels that medieval records never mentioned, while thermal imaging spots the ghostly outlines of long-sealed chambers. Yet for every mystery solved, a dozen more take its place. The recent discovery of Nottingham Castle's subterranean highway proves that even the most studied fortresses still guard secrets. It's a reminder that history isn't static, it breathes, shifts, and occasionally winks at us from behind a sliding panel. So, which of these hidden wonders resonated with you? Was it the cunning practicality of Carefilly's sliding door, or the haunting elegance of Mont St. Michel's tidal escape routes? Perhaps the raw ingenuity of Gedlin's spiral staircases, built before our eyes using centuries-old techniques. Drop your thoughts below. We're endlessly curious about which threads of the past grab your imagination. And if you've enjoyed this journey through stone and shadow, consider subscribing for more deep dives into history's untold corners. The past is never truly gone. It lingers in the grooves of well-worn steps, the echoes of forgotten corridors, and the thrill of discovery that comes when a hidden door finally, after centuries, swings open. Until next time, keep looking closer because history's greatest stories are often hiding in plain